Hello, my name is Michael Lambert, and today I want to talk a little bit about the Member of Parliament for Uxbridge and South Ruislip, who at the moment is on a speaking tour in America. He's over there earning lots and lots of money because I think he and his wife have rather expensive tastes, and obviously a measly parliamentary salary is not sufficient to keep them as they wish to be kept. And he has, for example, he's bought a house, hasn't he? Sounds very nice. He's got a moat and everything. It cost 3.8 million, which he paid cash for, which is an awful lot, considering that when he left Downing Street, he said he was penniless. And unfortunately, all this having to rush around, earning money all over the place, means that he doesn't really have much time for Parliament. And he's missed 187 votes in the last 10 months in Parliament. That's probably just about every vote, actually. So he's obviously now got other priorities. I presume he thinks he's going to come back as Prime Minister because he seems to be under the impression that he's still extremely popular. But I was thinking about just how much damage Johnson did to this country, probably more damage than almost anybody else ever in modern times. How in his short 3 years as Prime Minister and from the Brexit until he finally resigned, this country has been transformed. You know, we were doing reasonably well in 2016, and we're sort of keeping our heads up. But right now the country is in such a state. The economy is in such a state. We've got so many problems. The cost of living crisis is really beginning to bite, and the government, of course, will blame Putin and the EU and coronavirus, etc., and the last Labour government. But in fact, it's all a consequence of Brexit, which is making life so much difficult. And on top of everything else, we're now a worldwide laughingstock. Those that are not laughing at us pity us, and that's not great. And it really is all down to this buffoon Johnson and his clowning around and his irresponsibility, his laziness, his dishonesty, his incompetence, and his self-obsession. This is a man who was never interested in anything whatsoever apart from being in the limelight, being Prime Minister, being on the television, being making people laugh at his jokes and giving speeches. He just wanted to be in the centre of everyone's attention. And really, when it came down to the nitty-gritties of running the country, he wasn't interested. He found it all very tedious, I think. But he's done so much damage, and I was thinking about how he has degraded standards in public life, particularly in Parliament. How now lying in Parliament is perfectly normal, perfectly acceptable. People do it all the time. You're forever hearing people getting up and lying in Parliament. Even Sunak last week, he was asked about the economy, and he was saying how the OECD had forecast that we would grow quicker than Germany, France, and Italy next year. Well, they didn't say that. They said that we would grow quicker than Germany. That was all. Nothing about no. We're not going to grow quicker than France and Italy. But it sounded good soundbite, and nobody took notice. It'll never be challenged. It'll never be withdrawn. It's just normal now. You just lie. And this and the corruption we've seen, all this corruption with PPE. And when you look at the number of Tory MPs who are being paid by private health companies for doing all sorts, consultancy mostly. Just dozens and dozens and dozens of them, all taking money from private healthcare, which is obviously part of the NHS being privatised. And it's a complete collapse in standards. We've gone from being, as I said just now, a reasonably responsible country. I throughout my life that I've been following politics, I've always regarded our Parliament, our government, as being reasonably honest and reasonably straight, where it mattered if you had integrity and so on. Now it's just it's a government of a banana republic. It's really very sad. And I think, again with Johnson, this insisting in 2019 that anyone who stood for election had to say that they were pro-Brexit, well, that meant that people who were Remainers had to either lie or not stand, and a lot of them stood. And so we end up in the situation that I mentioned before, where we've got a cabinet of 30 people, 21 of whom believed that we should remain in the EU, 70% of them. And yet they're going around now, whenever the subject of Brexit is coming up, saying what a great thing it is. Brexit's the right thing to do. None of them will accept openly that it was an absolutely crazy, disastrous mistake. And we have also a situation where we've got this right wing, this ERG, who are Sunak is terrified of them. That's why, we all knew that last week he wasn't going to take any action against Braverman, that he would give in because he's frightened of her involvement in the ERG. And so the whole country is really having to follow along the wishes of these extreme right-wing nutters in the Tory party. It's really not the tail wagging the dog, it's the tail wagging the dog and the kennel in the house right now. But I wanted to just I wanted to just go through and just show how this lack of discipline, this corruption, this lying, and bullying, which is a new feature as well, just how it's been affected by various people, been illustrated by various people. By just going through quickly, just to remind you of some of the things that have happened, some of the people anyway that have been involved in this in high positions under Johnson. When he was the Foreign Secretary under Theresa May, when she was Prime Minister, one of his junior ministers was Priti Patel. She went off to Israel. And she said she would go on holiday, and she spent a couple of weeks there. And while she was there, she met all sorts of senior Israeli officials, including apparently the Prime Minister. Nobody knew anything about it. Nobody knew what was going on except her, and presumably Johnson knew about it, and Theresa May knew nothing about it. When she found out about it, she called in Patel and said what was going on, and she let her off. And then she discovered a bit later on that Patel had further meetings with Israelis in New York. Nobody, even to this day, knows really what was going on. But anyhow, she then got sacked. She then got done for bullying, and there was an inquiry, and it was found that she had been guilty of bullying in 3 separate departments. Johnson was told about it and said he had 100% confidence in her. So it was a total breach of the ministerial code, but he just wiped it away. You see, again, that sets this standard whereby anybody can do anything and get away with it because he's not going to take any action. You know, it's like if you imagine a regiment in the army. You've got a general who doesn't instill in discipline, who isn't really very interested in details, who is perhaps fiddling by selling off some of the equipment on the side and everybody knows it, or he's spending all his time having photo opportunities and going on day trips and things. Everything would collapse. Discipline would collapse. This is what happens here. Discipline is collapsed. Anybody just does anything they want. And then there's Braverman. He appointed her as Lord Chancellor. We all know about her. She's got issues like Patel has, this absolute hatred of immigrants. Patel said that the immigrants were people coming across in the boats. They were not immigrants, asylum seekers. She said that they were all child rapists and murderers. Braverman says that the 16% of people who abuse children in this country, 16% of them are Asians. And she talks about Pakistani men going all over the country raping and killing children. It's this sort of emotive, crazy language which you get a lot from the right wing of extreme parties, and it's frightening. Look at Dominic Raab. Bullying, 24 cases of bullying. And he wouldn't go right to the end. He sat on the front bench of Parliament, didn't he? Right until the very day when the final judgment was given that he was guilty of 24 cases of bullying. Nadim Zahawi. I mean, these are people running the country. Appointed by Johnson as Chancellor Exchequer. Then he suddenly found out that he'd made £20 million profit on some company he owned or his family owned in Gibraltar, and there was $3.5 million he hadn't paid in tax. You have to pay it. Look at trusts. Utterly incompetent non-entity. She, as business secretary or foreign secretary, she took a jet to Australia. £500,000 it cost, because she said that if they'd gone first class on a commercial airliner, which cost about 10 grand or something, people might have overheard them when they were talking. So they had to take this £500,000 jet. She spent £4,000 in a restaurant, didn't she? Or she tried to. And I think it was actually negotiated down to 1,500 quid when it was exposed. She recently she went to Dorney Wood while she was in office, and turns out when she left, a load of towels and bathrobes were missing. I mean, these are people. I mean, these sort of things in the past people would have resigned for and lived the rest of their lives in disgrace. But for them, it's just normal. It's just normal. The whole thing is just corrupt. Kwarteng crashed the economy, but he's not apologising. No. He just says we didn't do it. We did it too quickly. To hell with everybody. We knew best. We were right. Honest Bob Jenrick went to some fundraiser, didn't he? With sat next to Richard Desmond, who was trying to get through some planning permission in Tower Hamlets and having trouble. And if he hadn't got it through within a certain time, then he'd have had to pay about 40 million in tax. Honest Bob said, who was then, I think, a housing minister, he said, yeah, OK, I'll sort it out for you. And they exchanged text and so on the next day and so on. Jenrick went to his office and his officials all said, you can't do this, it's not right. But he did it, he pushed it through. That cost Tower Hamlets 40 million. Well, it is the poorest borough in London. But nonetheless, Jenrick's rich friend, Richard Desmond, a new friend, saved 40 million. Now, no one would suggest for a moment that Honest Bob got any kickback from that. No. And Honest Bob, again, when he was a housing minister, he had a junior minister, Jake Berry, who subsequently became party chairman for a while. And they had a certain amount of money to allocate to different constituencies that needed money. And so Jake Berry gave £25 million to Honest Bob's constituency. And Honest Bob gave £25 million to Jake Berry's constituency. And they both said they had nothing to do with it. They both said, no. The money that was granted to the committee, they hadn't made the decision. Michael Gove, Michelle Moan, she was the one he was the one she phoned. She phoned him. She was phoned him for her private plane, apparently, to ask about the PPE, and then he passed on the information to Lord Bethel. Lord Bethel, who handed out all these contracts, and then unfortunately gave his phone away, or he lost it, or it wouldn't work. Anyway, all the records were all suddenly lost. Matt Hancock, big PPE contract to his pub landlord. Pub landlord had no experience in PPE whatsoever. He got a nice big contract and loads of money out of it. See, these people running the country under Johnson. Gavin Williamson, Secretary of State for Defence. He was sacked or forced to resign for leaking information. It was thought he'd leaked information. Then became Education Secretary in an absolutely chaotic time when all that trouble with the exams. And then he became a minister without portfolio. And then suddenly it was revealed that he was a bully, and he'd been accused of bullying. He was forced to resign again, second time. Then there's the others, the shrapnel, Owen Patterson, employed by a firm he's lobbying for. There's Chris Pincher, who's accused of groping a couple of fellow MPs in a private club somewhere. There was the Nigel Parish with his looking at videos of his tractors. I mean, it's just on and on and on. And then you've got ones who, you've got Rees-Mogg, who's very pro-Brexit. I mean, by coincidence, he has a business where all the money is in tax havens, so that nobody knows what's there. It's all very secret. The Cayman Islands, you're not even allowed to. It's a criminal offence to go to the Cayman Islands and even inquire about businesses. He is very pro-Brexit, and I think he's probably quite relieved that the EU, who were planning to bring in legislation to enable them to try and clamp down a bit on tax havens, he's probably very pleased that we're out of it for that reason. And then again, just to give you an idea of just how crazy this Conservative Party under Johnson was, you get thickies, you get Nadine Dorris. You've got Jonathan Gullis and Lee Anderson. You got all the right-wing nutters, you know. You got Bill Cash and John Redwood and David Jones and Peter Bone and Andrea Jenkins and Christopher Chope and Braverman herself and Duncan Smith and Mark Francois and Dennis Swain. I mean, these people are all... I mean, it all goes back to Johnson. I mean, he's responsible for this whole government. I know a lot of... some of these people are appointed by Sunak, but and they're against Sunak. Look at him with his green card and his wife's having been a non-dom to avoid tax, and her investing in all these companies, some of them who've taken money off the government and then gone bust and so on. The whole thing is absolutely rotten and corrupt. And I think the worrying thing really is that it's very difficult to turn these things around. You know, once you've got this sort of rot and this corruption and this dishonesty, and once it's all become you know, the way things are done, that you know, there are no consequences whatever you do, it's very, very difficult to turn that around. But anyway, there it is. That's what I think about it. I think Johnson is really, you know, I think I very much hope that he is forever, ever held responsible for what he's done to this country. And it was just purely about him getting into Downing Street. He had the strength, the power of personality. He had the charm, the charisma to fool an awful lot of people. People like me, I saw through him very, very long time ago. I remember predicting nearly 2 years ago, well, not long after I started these videos, that he wouldn't last, because I knew he was so reckless that I knew that sooner or later he'd do something stupid. And of course Partygate was what he did, which was what brought him down really, and ignoring this Chris Pincher, the guy who was doing the groping, because he'd already been brought to the attention of Johnson before he appointed him. No, I think it's a great pity that politics are so degraded, and well, we'll see. Let's hope things change in the future. Anyway, that's what I have to say about it, and so if you've watched this far, thank you very much indeed. If you haven't already subscribed, I really would appreciate it if you would do so, if you know of anybody who you think might be interested. And until next time, bye for now.